Hey everybody, welcome back to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron. Today we're going to be working on, can you guess it? That's right, getting back on groundskeeper and keeping the truck rolling. So today I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and put the engine and transmission in. And the main reason for that is because next week I'm going to get started on the front suspension, and having the weight of the engine and transmission up front will help to compress the springs to hook everything back up when I put the suspension back in. So that, and to be honest with you, I really just want to see what the motor looks like sitting in there. So if you've been watching the channel for a while and you've seen the old videos, you saw us go through this motor, clean it up, reseal it, paint it, so on and so forth. And you saw me clean the transmission up to get it ready. I got all new seals for it this morning, so before we bolted up to the truck, or before we bolted up to the motor, we're at least going to put the torque converter front input shaft seal in and stuff like that. So I got clean up the towers that hold the motor mounts. We'll get the towers on, we'll get the motor mounts on, and we'll get the motor over here, get it hanging, get the transmission bolted up to it, and then we'll be ready to set it in. I got a few small things to do on the truck still before that. I'm going to pull that transmission cross member out. It's pretty caked with stuff. I'll pull it out, get it cleaned up. I'm going to clean up and paint the frame rails underneath the cab in the meantime, and then we'll be ready to set her in there. So buckle up and let's go for a ride. All right, it's about 6.5 hours later and I've been busting my butt. I really want to get this motor and trans set in here today, but I don't want to rush anything. I want to do it right. So I've gone through and done everything I need to do to get the motor and trans set in the truck and make life easier later on and all that stuff. So I cleaned and painted the frame under the cab. You can kind of see that it's all cleaned up and painted now. I cleaned up and painted the motor mount towers and got new motor mounts and painted them because they used to powder coat them, but for some reason they just, I guess it's too expensive to powder coat them now, so they come in raw metal. So cleaned them and painted them, cleaned the towers and painted them. These lines here, I cleaned them up the best I could, but I didn't want to make too much of a mess on the clean frame, so I wiped them down. They look decent. While I was out there cleaning stuff, I cleaned the tranny cross member because we're going to need to throw that in here shortly. So I got it out, cleaned it all up before I painted the frame. So it's sitting outside drying. And while I was out there cleaning everything, I went ahead and cleaned the upper and lower control arms, the drag link and tie rods. I don't even remember. I've cleaned so much stuff. But we got our clamshells cleaned up, painted, and installed on the motor. Got the fuel pump on, got the engine oil dipstick in, and it's kind of dusty. Got our transmission sitting here. So next thing I'm going to do is, I got the new seals for the transmission and the pan gasket filter. I got all the seals and filters and everything for the transmission, but I'm gonna pull the torque converter out, put the front seal in the pump where the torque converter goes in, and then we'll hang the motor from the cherry picker and put the flex plate on it, and then we'll get the transmission bolted up to the motor. And then we'll set it in the truck. So I'm gonna set up a camera so y'all can watch what I'm doing, and we're gonna get ready to stab this pig in there. Okay, so we got set up here. I'm gonna pull this torque converter out, and then we're gonna change that front seal like I told you So this is probably going to make a big mess all over the floor when I pull it. Hopefully not too bad. Oh wow, cool. We didn't make a mess. Alright, you see this seal in here? Yeah, you can see it. It actually looks like it's been changed recently. Like honestly, it looks brand new. Definitely not the original. Doesn't have any scrapes or tears or anything in it. And the shaft on the torque converter is nice and smooth and looks good. So I'm not even going to change that. It doesn't look like it's been leaking. So we're just going to go ahead and slap that torque converter back in. The seal's not dried out or anything like that. I mean, a lot of things to check, but now I just got to do the fight. If you guys have ever done this before, you know the fight. Come on. I think that's all the way in. Seems to be. It's in a good ways. I'm pretty sure that clicked 3 times. And I guess the best thing to do is just hook it up to the engine and find out. Because that's when you get irritated and have to start all over, you know what I mean? So why don't we just go ahead and do that, because that seems like the fun thing to do. So I'm gonna get the cherry picker set up, get the motor hanging from it, and then we'll hook this thing up to the motor. Okay, you can probably tell by the fact that we got the engine hanging from the cherry picker that I got the engine hanging from the cherry picker. So the first thing we got to do before we do anything else is put the flex plate on, and then once we get the flex plate on, we can move it over, drop it down, slide the transmission on, mount it up, and then we'll be ready to put it in the truck. So I'm going to put Loctite on all these bolts. You don't have to use a lot, but use enough to piss the next guy off, because why not? And then you know they're not going to come out. So I'm going to put some red Loctite on them. I'm going to torque them all down with my Ooga impact, and then we'll move on to what I said we're doing next, hooking the tranny up. Does anybody know which way this goes on here? I always get it backwards. Is that right? You know, it is? Okay, thank you. All kidding aside, if you don't do this all the time, it's real easy to forget which way it goes. Where the torque converter bolts on, it's always got a rise on one side and a dish on the other side. The rise goes towards you, the dish goes towards the motor. I might be out of juice. It's enough for that one. Alright, let me go see if I got some more Loctite and we'll finish this project up. Found some more. Anybody miss me? No? Nobody? Yeah, it's alright. Alright, anybody know what the torque spec on these is? Nope, me neither. Looks fine. Guess just got a little burr on it or something. It'll go. There we go. Don't worry about this one that was a little hard going in, it's just got extra Loctite. Alright, so I'm gonna get this thing over where we can get it hooked up to the transmission, and then we'll get it hooked up to the transmission. Alright, here we go. I'm not tightening this down or sucking it in with these bolts or anything. I'm just starting it to use it to help me get it lined up. But it actually seemed like it started going on pretty good when I was just barely tightening that bolt, so it might just go right on. Yep, it did. So I take that back. I am using these bolts to suck it up to the engine. I have to get a wrench and, hey look, there's a wrench. Alright, training's hooked up. I can almost get my finger in between the torque converter and the flex plate. That tells me we got the torque converter in all the way. So I'm going to jack this thing up. Let it tilt, you know, the training's going to tilt back. I'm going to jack it up, let it tilt back, and I'm assuming that some transmission fluid and maybe some water is going to come out. So I'm going to grab a bucket or something, jack it up, and if it starts running training fluid out and whatnot, I'm going to let it sit here and drip until it's done, because I don't want to be dripping transmission fluid all over that paint that we just did and all that. So, and also I'm gonna put the motor mount bolts in so that it's buttoned down, but I'm not gonna put the tranny cross member in right now because I'm still gonna do the pan gasket and filter, and it's a lot easier to get to the back pan bolts if the tranny cross member is not in there. So I'm gonna get it in, get it level. I'll put a jack stand underneath it for now, and then we'll come back and do the tranny pan gasket and the filter, and then I'll put the tranny cross member in after that. So I'm going to go ahead and jack this up, see if we can get all the excess fluid out of it for now, and then we'll put it in. Alright, I let it sit there and drip until it wasn't dripping anymore, but just as a precaution, I put a diaper on it. So we got everything lined up. The goal for this mission is to not bump into the firewall or the frame at all, because everything's cleaned up and fresh. Don't want to nick any paint or anything like that. So it might take a little while, might be slow going, and I might not talk a lot, which that's a surprise, I know. But I'm going to take my time, slowly walk this thing down in here. All right, motor's in. No damage was done. No scratches on anything, and no marks on anything at all. So it's sitting in there. I got to go and get a jack stand and get it underneath that transmission to get it up, and then I'll be able to get the passenger side motor mount bolt in the rest of the way. I'm going to tighten down the motor mount bolts, and then I'll take you guys up close and show you the motor sitting in there. This thing is in. Progress on this truck, I'm not even going to say it because I'll just jinx myself, but motor's in, tranny's in, motor mount bolts are in and tightened down. Tranny's sitting on a jack stand so I can do the pan gasket. Yeah, it's just too good to be true. I love this truck. So I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like from different angles all sitting in here, and then I'm gonna call it a day. It's been a long one, and then when I come back on Monday, we'll do the tranny pan gasket, put the cross member in. I'll start putting some parts on this motor that'll be easier to put on without everything else around it, and I'll leave off the stuff that it'll be hard to get other stuff on if it's on, if that makes any sense. But for now, here it is. Motor sitting in the truck. Everything is shiny. Sits down in there nice. It's a little tiny bit crooked, maybe a ½ inch off, but I just noticed that because I've done a whole bunch of these. It's just the tranny. It's got to be brought over a little bit when we put the cross member in. No big deal. But man, I love this truck. Everything's in. I'm about to die. I'm gonna go home. I'll see y'all in a minute. All right, well, it's Monday afternoon now, and I spent all morning chasing parts, and it's time to get back on old groundskeeper. So first thing I'm gonna do today is pull the tranny pan off, clean it all up, probably shoot some paint on it, reinstall it, change the output shaft seal on it, and put the transmission cross member in. So I don't have a lift or nothing, so trying to film doing that stuff for you guys will be a little hard underneath the truck, so I'm just going to go ahead and knock it out. While I got the tranny pan out, I'll show you guys that stuff and how clean or dirty it is, and clean it up and paint it and stuff like that. But for the most part, I'm just going to knock this work out real quick, and then we'll keep going here. Alright, I got the pan out. The fluid in this thing was very clean. As you can tell, it has a little bit of water in it, but that's one of the reasons we're doing this. It's got some normal amounts of clutch disc in it for a motor that's got some miles, or a tranny that's got some miles on it. But we're going to clean it up, make sure we got all the water out, clean the pan, shoot some paint on it, then we'll put a new filter on it and stick it back in there. All right. It's another new day. Well, not new. I've been working a little bit this morning, but yesterday was pretty slow going. I was gone half the day running parts and all that stuff, and then when I came back, I cleaned up and painted that tranny pan and stuff like that, and then I had to wait on paint to dry, and I've been cleaning bolts and all that. It's just real time-consuming, boring stuff, and but we got all that done yesterday afternoon, and then I came over this morning and got the tranny pan back on, got the engine cross member in. I'm going to take you under there and show you. Tranny cross member is all painted up and installed. New transmission mount. It's all there. All together, pan's on, cleaned up and painted, looks good. Finally got all that stuff done. Got the seat taken out and got it taken over to the owner of the truck, because he's going to take it and get it recovered in the proper color. And yeah, so we're moving right along. It's a little slow in the process right now, but it'll pick up here shortly. I'm gonna go ahead and start dressing this motor out with stuff that's easier to get on while there's no fenders and inner fenders and everything else in the way. So I'm gonna drop the distributor. I got the motor brought up the top dead center. I'm gonna put the carburetor on. I'll hook up the fuel line that goes from the fuel pump up to the carburetor. Just a bunch of stuff like that, just stuff that's a lot easier to get on now when everything's not in the way. So I'm gonna get all that done, and here we go. All right, I got some parts cleaned up and painted. We're gonna go ahead and start throwing some stuff on. I'm gonna do the front pulleys, the distributor, carburetor. I've got the brackets for the alternator sitting over there drying. I painted them, but they're kind of turning out like garbage. I think I got a bad can of paint because I painted everything else, same weather conditions, same everything, and it turned out fine. And those are, I don't even know. So I think I got a bad can of paint, so I'm probably gonna have to stand those back down and paint them again. So we might not get to that right now, but it's all right. Just trying to get some of this stuff out of the way, keep the momentum going, and getting everything done. So we're gonna put this balancer pulley on first. Doesn't seem like it wants to sit in there like it's supposed to, but it's probably just a paint. We'll see if it goes in, if I ease it in. Yeah, it didn't even take much, it popped right in there, so we're alright. Put our balancer bolts in. You definitely don't want to over tighten the balancer bolt because it'll rip the threads right out of the snout of the crank. And trust me, you don't want those problems. Just a little tappy, half a ugga dugga, it'll be good. Throw our water pump pulley on. And I'm not going to bolt this down because we are going to run a mechanical fan on this motor. So I'm getting it on there, just one more thing done. And I'm going to just start the nuts on these studs, just so it doesn't fall back off. One more thing down. Got our distributor all cleaned up. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I already got the motor up the top dead center and all that. I'm sure that my oil pump's not going to be where I need it, but we're going to go ahead and almost put this in without the gasket on it. So gasket right here on the distributor. I put a motor together one time and forgot it. And I'll tell you what, you forget that little gasket in there, that sucker will pump out some oil. So I'm gonna go find what I did with that gasket, and then I'll get back over here and we'll put the distributor in. Alright, got my little gasket now. Make sure we slide that on there. And then what I'm going to do, if you look at your, see if I can show you this. So, on your distributor, your rotor's pointing here. If you go straight down and look, your little deal where it goes into your oil pump is pointed exactly the same as your rotor. So what you can do is you can go in there and turn that oil pump to where it's close a little bit before where you want the rotor pointing, and that should get you pretty close. And yeah, we're way off. Turn that right about to number 1. We know we want our distributor pointed right here. So when we go to set it down, rather than having it pointed right where we want it, we're going to, hang on a second. Get you guys up a little bit where you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so we know we want our rotor pointed right here at number 1. So when we go to set our distributor down, our rotor's right here. We're going to turn it back so it's a little bit before, because when it goes down in that cam gear, it's going to turn before it seats down. So we want it a little bit before that so that it can turn into place. So then you want to check and make sure that your base, where it meets your intake, sits all the way down against it. Then we'll check our rotor. Not quite at number 1, but pretty dang close. See if we can grab another tooth here. Still get it to go down in there. Nope. So we'll be good right there. We can get enough adjustment out of our cap to make it okay with number 1 being there. So that's in. Gonna get our hold down. I'm not going to tighten this because we're going to have to adjust it and move it. I'm just going to get the hold down in there, keep it from popping out on us if I turn the motor over or something. That will happen. I've had it happen to me before. I had the distributor sitting all the way down in there like I wanted it. I bumped the motor over for something, and then I went to start it and it was acting goofy and I didn't know what was wrong with it. And I looked around and I finally realized that that had come out. So I'm gonna go get a wrench, I'll tighten that up, and then we'll throw the carburetor on. Alright, got the distributor all buttoned down. Now we're going to set the carburetor on here. I got it. This carburetor worked great. When it was running in the other truck, it didn't leak, it didn't have any issues, it ran good. So since I'm going back with it, I didn't even mess with it. I just cleaned it up really good and we're putting it back on. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but it's real easy to warp the base plate on a carburetor. So you don't ever want to just like start in one corner, crank that bolt down, and then go to the next one, crank it down. Because if you don't tighten it down evenly, it can warp, and that's a common problem for vacuum leaks. Like you get that warped and it's not sitting right, you get a vacuum leak and you'll search for it forever because you think the carburetor's sitting down there good and it's all good, and you don't ever want to like hammer down on these things. They don't have to be all the way tight. Well, I mean, they got to be tight, but you don't have to like crank on them. Just get them good and snug, and they'll be good to go. So. I got our metal fuel line here that was in the parts truck, donor truck. I cleaned it all up. Looks brand new-ish. I just gotta remember which way it goes. There we go. Now on these quadrajets, right inside here where the fuel line goes into it, it's got this big hump that comes out of the front of the carburetor. There's a filter in there, a fuel filter, and especially when they sit for a long time with fuel in them, they swell up, and when they swell up, they'll block off all fuel flow into your carburetor. I've had it happen to me before. I'll just be driving down the road, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it starts breaking up and leaning out and all that, and it's been that filter in there. So I took this filter out, I replaced it, it's brand new, it's good to go. And then since this truck's been sitting for a while and we went through all this work to make all this nice, when I hook up my fuel pump to my fuel line from the tank here, I'm going to put an inline filter in here. That way we have filter before the pump and then a secondary filter up here before the carburetor. So I'm going to go get I didn't bring my wrench over here to tighten this line down, so I'm going to go get the wrench. We'll tighten down this line and see what kind of trouble we can get into next. Alright, well, it doesn't really seem like I got a lot done to me, but a lot of work went into what I did get done. I mean, time cleaning everything, prepping everything, painting everything, all that. It took me a couple days, but I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. I keep looking at it. It's looking really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and show it to you. Here we are, motor, trans, carburetor, distributor, fuel pumps hooked up to one side. I gotta get a filter and hook it up down here, but that's no big deal. I already showed you guys all the new trans mount, cross member, all that stuff, so it's all done. So it's really coming along. I mean, I feel like progress has slowed down a little bit from, you know, the last video, but it actually has. I mean, I still have the energy. I'm still excited about getting this truck done. I'm just ready to boom, boom, boom. But, I mean, in the last video, it was tearing it down, cleaning it up, painting it. I mean, there's not a whole lot that goes along with that. And, now that I'm putting it back together, there's a lot more to it. I need parts, obviously, and some stuff's getting pretty hard to get these days. I mean, I got some stuff ordered. We've got some stuff in that I can keep on going and do some other stuff for the next video. But like, as far as finishing dressing out the motor stuff like that. There's stuff that we have ordered, but it just hasn't made it yet, and so it slows you down a little bit. I'm pumped. It's looking great. We got some more details, and we found out what the Mississippi State logo looked like on the door back for these trucks, and that was really the last thing that I needed to know to clone one of these trucks or take it back to what it was. We got the wheels, we got the right hubcaps coming. It's gonna be, we're getting the seat recovered right now, and it's going back together looking great. I'm very pleased with it. So with all that being said, I'm gonna end this video here because the next thing I'm about to start on is another big project. And rather than pile a couple big projects into one video and make it 2 hours long, I'm just gonna break it up and make more shorter videos. So I'm getting ready to get started on the front suspension. There will be a video on that next. And we got the drop spindles in, we got the drop springs in. I've got all the parts cleaned up ready for paint, but I haven't painted them yet. And so next video is going to be lowering the front end, putting all the suspension back together, and who knows, maybe something else. But if you're subscribed, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You guys don't know how much it means to me to be able to make these videos and have you guys watch them and all that. It means a lot. I really enjoy it. If you're not subscribed, please do. I'm gonna have a lot of good content coming out, and eventually I'll make something you like. Leave me a comment, tell me what you think. How's the truck coming along? Hit the like button, you know, all that good stuff. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.